Hello friends, welcome to my channel Sushant Chess Toys. Today we are going to look at the next opening topic, that is the Sicilian dragon, and we are at the third part of the Sicilian dragon. Today we are going to cover the D5 Gambit. This is going to be the last part of the Sicilian dragon. You can check out my earlier two dragon lessons for the other lines. Let's get to the position. After E4 C5, Knight F3 D6, D4, white is heading for the open Sicilian. Qd4 Nd4, Knight F6, Knight C3 G6. Black intends to play the bishop to G7 and attack on the H8 A1 diagonal. The line which we are covering in this, white tries to do long castle and prepares his own attack on the black king. So bishop E3, Bg7, F3, stopping the move knight G4, castle, Nc6 can also be played, it leads to the same position, Qd2 Nc6, castle, and here we are at the main position where we have different options for black. In the last two lessons we looked at if black just plays Bd7, how white continues the attack, and in the second chapter we saw after knight d4, Bd4 Be6 there is mutual attacking prospects for both. The move long castle actually aims to stop the move d5, but nevertheless black can give the d pawn as a gambit over here. In the last chapter I mentioned after knight into c6, b into c6, ed5, cd5, it is very dangerous for white to grab the pawn on d5. After the move knight d5, qd5, it looks as if it's forced to trade the queens because queen is attacked and the rook is attacked. But black has a very strong move, queen c7, putting pressure on c2, and after the move queen a8, bishop f5, creating discovered attack on the queen, and the bishop and queen both attack c2. It looks as though after queen into f8, king into f8, white is doing well after the move bd3. So materially we see that white is on top of the game. He has got two rooks for the queen, plus he has got pawn over there. But after the move bd3 comes queen e5, and this double attack creates a winning position for black. There are two threats, queen e3 check and qb2 check, and it's impossible to parry both of them, and black is in winning position. So after rook e1, qb2, Kd2, bishop c3 check, bishop into e1, white will be in a losing position. So this is the main reason that it's very risky to take the pawn on d5, and the line I am recommending here will be easy to play at all levels. We are going to discuss some in-depth analysis also by top players, but we'll try to keep it as simple as possible. Let's go to the main position. The line I am recommending here, in that what we will do is first we will ruin black's pawn structure in the center and then try to exchange this very important bishop for black. So black's main source of attack is the g7 bishop, so white will try to trade that. So after the move ed5 first, because if we take nc6 then pawn comes to c6 and it protects d5. So first after ed5 we'll force black to take knight d5 and then go for the move knight into c6. So what will happen? Black will have to capture with the pawn and somewhat his pawn structure would be spoiled. So first logic says that this pawn itself is not that weak, we are unable to attack that pawn, and on the top of that black is getting open file to attack near the white king. But white is allowing this because he is forcing some lines where after the move bd4, this bd4 happens to be a very important idea, where white is forcing black either to trade the bishops or play e5 and block his own bishop. So here the two moves which come to mind, main moves, either knight into c3 in which the bishops might get traded, or the move e5. These two are the main lines over here. We will have a look at some other move also. Let's discuss the move Queen a5 also. The move Queen a5, which happens to be an outright blunder. White can just take bishop into g7 first, king takes g7 forced, and now comes the simple knight d5. So what we are doing here is creating a discovered attack on the queen. After cd5, queen is attacked, so it's not possible to take cd5. After the move queen a2, which seems to threaten mate on a1, white can either play just knight c3, queen a1, knight b1, or he can first interpolate queen check from d4 and then bring back the knight to c3. So which will give winning position to white. He will be just a piece up. Another move, Qd2 check, rook d2, cd5, and after the move rook d5, we make out that this position has become losing for black. Black has just lost a pawn for no compensation whatsoever. After the move bishop e6, rook can go to the c5 because black wants to get rook c8. So b6, rook c5, when bishop a2 allows b3 followed by kb2, and the bishop on a2 would be trapped. So we see that the queen a5 move is an outright blunder. Let's look at the main move now, knight c3. Knight into c3, queen takes c3. Black tries to avoid the exchange of bishops, but in reality it's not possible. Moves are all forced. If bishop into d4, then just rook takes d4, and this is the positional play white is looking at. So once the rook comes to d4, white will go bishop c4 and then h4 h5. So white is able to combine his kingside attack and stop black's attack at the same time. We'll have similar positions in the game as well. So black goes for the move bh6 check first, trying to see if kb1, then he can try to exploit this pin. But white uses bishop e3, discovered attack, rook attacks the queen, and bishop attacks the bishop. So bishop into bishop forced, queen into e3, and now black has to move his queen. So we are following a very famous game, Garry Kasparov versus Sicilian Topalov, and we know that Garry Kasparov was the 13th world champion, one of the strongest players in the history of chess, and a line which is played by him of course attracts lot of analysis, okay, and we cannot say that the variations are going to be less complicated, but I feel the position has simplified a lot. White's plan is very easy. White goes for the moves bc4, h4, h5, and whenever possible he takes the pawn on e7. So we will take this game little further and see what all analysis is possible. So here the main move is queen b6. Apart from that, queen can go to a5 and put pressure on a2. After queen a5, white plays bishop c4, and this analysis is very important for our opening preparation, because now black will attack the bishop on c4. So bishop goes to b3. The bishop is trying to maintain itself on protecting the king side and also attacking the opponent's king side. And after the move c5, it seems like c4 is a big problem, but rook d5 and black is in serious trouble. We'll consider both rook c8s now to protect c5. So after the move rook f8, it's evident that queen takes e7. Now it's important to remove the pin. If black tries to remove the pin with the move Qb4, then white gets a forced combination based on the weakness of f7. So he uses a line clearance sacrifice, rook d8 check, forcing rook into d8, qf7 check, king h8 forced, and queen f6 and checkmate. So moving the f rook to c8 was very bad. Black should play the move rook a c8, after which also queen takes e7. Again, white has kept the pin on the fifth rank. He is about to attack the f7 pawn. So the threat is rook d7, putting pressure on the f7 pawn. And after the moves, play the move rook c7, attacking the queen, and white can maintain his queen on e5 or g5 squares. So he is keeping the pin intact, taking the queen away, and white is about to get his h rook to d1 and complete his development, then trade the pieces from d7 or d8 squares. So this should be a clearly better position for white. So let's look at the main line. Here the main move for black is Qb6, bringing the queen to challenge the white queen and bearing down on the b2 pawn. So white has to play very carefully. White plays queen e7. The queen is not only interested in taking the pawn, but white has noted that next move it can retreat to a3 and keep both the pawns a2 and b2 well protected. So after the move bishop e6, white goes queen a3, protects his pawns on a2 and b2 and prepares to play h4 h5, and the position is slightly favorable for him because there is no direct way to increase pressure on the b2 pawn. So in the game which I mentioned before, Kasparov versus Topalov, black went for the move rook fd8, to which white plays bishop a6. Idea is simple, connecting the rooks. So rook d1 allows rook into d1. Nicely white is controlling the c5, e3 dark squares. Bishop on h6 prevents any rook c8 ideas. Of course, he didn't want to block the bishop to d3. Didn't want to block his rook by bd3, and bishop e2 was bit passive. But black played the strong move c5. He wants to do c4 and cut off this bishop. So Kasparov returns the bishop to e2, but soon plays f4 followed by bishop f3. And this plan is unstoppable, after which we see that white has just an extra pawn. So c4, f4, rook comes to d4. White wants to, black wants to double the rook and put pressure on d1. So rook takes rook, queen takes rook, g3, protecting the f4 pawn, and here black had the idea c3. Of course, Kasparov must have had lot of opening preparation here, and he managed to get into a clearly better position. But what I am suggesting here, by doing this line, we know all our ideas very well, and more or less reaching this position is very much forced. Of course, I don't think any opponent will reach this exact position. So here the game went with Qc3, Qc3, Bc3, bishop a2, after which white used both his pawns to c4, c5, and the king covered the square c4. Of course, I will try to give this game in the description. Do check the game in the description if you are interested in the full game. Let's go to the other main line now. I usually chooses the move e5, which is absolutely in spirit of the dragon variation. He wants to get a complicated play, keep the bishops intact, and most of the pieces are there on the board. White has a very nice setup here. He creates a bind on the central squares. Let's see, bishop c5, attacking the rook on f8. Of course, black sets a very interesting trap. I would say it's a positional sacrifice, not a trap. After the move bishop into f8, black can just take queen f8, and we see that after rook b8, the move e4 will be evident, and the bishop will start eyeing the b2 square. And this position is very dangerous, because after rook b8, qb4, b2 is weak, and white will have to move pawns in front of his king, and the c3 square and b2 and a2, all these three squares will come under fire. Of course, white should not go for such a exchange grabbing idea. White simply sidesteps the idea and plays the strong move knight e4. So as I told you, white is eyeing the bind on the d6 square. He is using the fact that whenever black plays f5, like instant f5 will allow the strong move knight g5, and after bf7 we simply trade on f7 followed by bc4, and at an appropriate moment white can take the pawn on d5. Black now plays the move rook e8, to which there are several ideas. The setup what white wants, he can keep his king on b1, bishop c4, bishop goes to b3, and when black plays a5 a4, he simply plays a4. So this is one setup which we can look at. Okay. And keep the king side composed over here. Later on invade the position by Nd6 or play h4 h5. The game I am showing you here, or the line I am showing you here, white used the same idea but in a slightly different mode. White goes h4 when black has a5. His idea is to go a4 and the bishop may not get placed on b3. So immediately white goes bishop c4. Now what happens? To a4, white can go for the move immediate h5, and his attack goes very strong. So white is eyeing for three ideas. One, he can go h5, h into g6, which is a typical dragon plan. Second, the knight is eyeing the d6 square, and thirdly, the knight can go to g5 also in this case, taking on e6 followed by breaking on the d5 square. Do note that after the moves a4, a3, white will not have to worry much. He can just play the move b3 and seal the queen side here, which is actually his king side. And then he can open the position. Already by that time h5 would be there and we would have opened the position. So any position like hg, knight g5, you can see that brings serious pressure into the black position. We can say that already white is having a dream run here. Of course, we have to be very careful about the move e4 when the bishop is getting opened. But we can see that after knight e6 followed by bd4, there will be forced exchange on the diagonal and the h8 square will fall under white's hand. So this is what white is looking at. Again, after the moves a5, bishop c4, black played h5 trying to stop white's h5. So white opens the position by g4, h into g4, h5, white is all set now, h into g6 followed by queen h2 or knight g5. These two ideas are there in his mind. Black had the move g5 in his mind. So he is trying to keep the position as much closed as possible, but here white has a forced way to reach the black king. So white went h6, bishop f8, bishop takes f8, rook takes f8. If king goes to f8, then the move h7 can become very dangerous. Also we can consider the move knight g5. So h7, kg7, knight g5 should give a winning position. So rook f8. Now to h7 the king can hide in front of the pawn. So white went knight g5, king goes to h8, avoiding any threats of h7. Of course, g into f3 is suicidal, rook will come to g1. So king h8, knight into e6, f into e6 and fg4. And we can see that white got all that he wanted. He still has the king side attack going. Plan is very simple, a g5, g6 and get the rook to g1 and use g7 or h7 check at a right moment. We can see that this knight is still unable to move. After knight f4, we can either trade the queens or go for a very strong idea, queen e3 or queen c3, which will put immense pressure into the black position. White still has the plan g5, g6 in his hand. So we can conclude that this position is clearly better. In the game, black played rook f4. First bishop takes d5 before playing g5. C takes d5 and now g5. White pawns on the king side decide the fate of the game. White has a very simple plan. we will try to attack the e5 pawn, play the pawn to g6 and use g7 or h7 at a right moment. So there are two plans, one going g6, rook g1 and then h7 when g7 will be unstoppable, or going g7, king h8 and using g8 queen check tactic at a right moment when he can penetrate on the g7 square. a4, let's quickly go and complete the game. Rook dg1, a3, b3, queen moves to b6, trying to cover the d4, e3 and f2 squares. Black is trying to penetrate by rook f2 or queen f2. White went g6 and here black played the move queen f2, after which white played queen c3, and queen c3 is a double attack because one he is attacking the e5 square and second there is a small combination. So after the move rook f5, white has a very simple move queen c7 which wins on the spot. So there is no need to play the move g7. Rook f7 is not possible now and queen e3 check, just the king goes to b1. Black played the move Qd4, after which now we cannot do the move Qc7 because of Qa1 check. But white had foreseen this g7 check, king forced to go to h7, then g8 queen check, rook takes g8 and now comes the move Qc7 with a check. And this time rook f7 is not possible, so king h8 and after rook g8 check, king g8, Qg7 and white won the game. So with this we are concluding the d5 gambit, and for the time being we can say that the Sicilian dragon is over. I hope you are enjoying these lessons. Do like, share and subscribe the channel. Thanks for your time.